wondered the process it takes to get a drug from the laboratory all the way to the pharmacy? Well, this lecture will discuss that process, and in it we'll be able to see a few different of the nuances of getting a drug from the lab to the pharmacy. There's 4 phases, and we'll learn about what happens in each of those phases. We'll also learn about how long a patent lasts, and then just the process of getting it all the way to market, which can be quite costly. So in the beginning, basically a scientist just has an idea. He says, I know how the body works, I know how this drug should work in the body, and he or she from that point will be able to take it to animal testing. And through animal testing, we can see, is this a good drug or not? Do we need to move it to the next level? Through that animal testing, they'll collect all the data, and they'll be able to see whether it's going to be safe or unsafe for human use. This process has been going on since 1938. You know, used to, if you ever saw some of the old movies, maybe old music videos, I'm thinking Michael Jackson's Say, Say, Say. Go check that out if you're unfamiliar with it. But they're selling medication off the back of a truck. You know, you'd hear the old snake oil salesman. And that would happen a little too often for the government's liking. So because of that, they have this nice new drug application where, unfortunately, a little too much red tape at times. It can take 10 to 15 years to get it to market, so maybe some good therapies are held up in red tape. However, this also can keep bad therapies from making it to market, and that may be just as important. You know, we don't want to cause any harm to a patient by rushing a product to market. So this slide will show the 4 phases of clinical trials. You can see it just says phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pretty easy to understand there. The process, as I've already mentioned, can take 10 to 15 years, a nice long lengthy process. But what I want you to notice is the last point down at the bottom. It says that the patents can last for about 20 years from the initial new drug application. Now, do the math here. You can see the process takes 10 to 15 years. A patent lasts for 20 years. You may only have this medication with exclusivity before generics come out for 5 to 10 years. This is why drug prices are so high. You have to recoup all the money you took into the research and development of the drug because it took so long to get through the process. So as you can see, this is a lengthy process. It's a money spending process, and really they're trying to do that because the patent only lasts for potentially 5 to 10 years on the market. So let's discuss phase 1 of the process. This is where they're going to do testing on humans. We've already determined that through animal testing that it should be safe for humans. Because we're on this first early stages, we're just going to do 20 to 80 people, just a few small handful of humans. Okay, the individuals tested here are healthy. They're not at risk for any disease. So if it's a diabetes medication, the patients that they're giving the medication to may not even have diabetes. They're just regular old Joes that don't have any disease states to speak of. The focus primarily here is on drug safety. Are the side effects just too bad to be able to even go on? Do we even need to bother with it? And some drugs do just stop right here at phase 1. Once the drug gets passed on to phase 2, we can move on to the larger group of people, to almost up to 300 people. So now we've expanded the population size we're going to work with. These patients do have the disease. So in my example before, if it's a diabetes drug, now we're actually going to be giving this medication to diabetic patients. So we'll know a little bit more about it here in phase 2. They're going to study the drug against placebo. Now, if you don't know, a placebo is a word for basically just a sugar pill. This sugar pill will need to look just like your control drug, just like the drug we're testing, so that the patients won't know, and even better, hopefully the administrator of the test won't even know. So it'll be what you'll hear the term double blind. The administrator doesn't know, and the patient doesn't know. Someone knows because it's probably numbered to where they can check back later to see, but hopefully that's someone that's just a test administrator, not the person that's actually administering the medication. Here they're going to look at the effects compared to the current standard of care. So if in your medications that you've looked at you can see metformin works really well for diabetics, I need to see that this drug does as good or better than metformin. We don't need to come out with a drug that's worse than the standard of care, yet has a whole lot more money attached to it, is more expensive. That is not to say it never happens, though. We definitely see some bad therapies out there that are very expensive. So that is phase 2. Hopefully, It'll move on to phase 3 because at this point you've spent a lot of money on the medication. This is the final phase before market approval. Now we're going to get up to 3,000 people. So now we're getting thousands of humans here to be able to test this drug to see if it's going to be good to go to market. They're going to study the new medication in combination with the other drugs. And so with this, in the combination with other drugs, we can see whether there's side effects, okay, interactions, all those fun things that whenever you have this drug and you combine them in the body, something bad happens or maybe something good happens. Maybe they'll work synergistically and work well with each other. So what happens? Then finally, approval. Approval. You have your drug to market, and we will call this phase 4, okay? So 3 phases before it goes to market. The 4th phase is actually data that's collected after it's gone to market. So whenever you get that drug and it just came out, just let yourself know, oh, I'm in the 4th phase of testing here. But actually, 4th phase of testing goes on throughout the process of the drug being on the market. So if a drug is on the market, it is going through that 4th phase of testing. There is data being collected. So to receive approval to get to this past the 3rd phase and into the 4th, the drug has to be safe, effective. The benefits have to outweigh the risk, okay? If the benefit is better than the side effects, then obviously we can still bring it to market. It needs to be reproducible and consistent. Doesn't need to happen 1 out of every 10 times. It needs to happen 10 out of every 10. And then, of course, you have to have sufficient labeling, of course. That's just a simple law that you know anyway. So phase 4, as I've just put right here, we'll reiterate, it actually needs to be looked at after it's on the market. And the healthcare workers are who are going to report the adverse events. Not the patients themselves, but the healthcare workers. So a new drug application, let's look at just the wrap up here of everything that's on there. The pharmaceutical company, the cost from the beginning of this lecture, where they were doing the animal testing, all the way up until phase 4 studies, it's going to cost between 4 and 11 billion. 4 and 11 billion. This, of course, makes your drug prices go up. So if you've ever been prescribed that brand new hot drug, you know, the one that cost, you know, $300 per prescription, this is why. This is why. That being said, pharmaceutical companies seem to be doing all right for themselves. They show record profits. They're doing well. The business model does work. However, sometimes the pharmacist will have to suggest a lower price medication for patients that can't quite afford the brand name medications that sometimes doctors write for. So that is how a drug goes from the laboratory to the pharmacy. Use that knowledge to hopefully get a question or two right on the exam, and we'll go on through the law parts when we get to a quiz.